Have you ever heard where there's a will, there's a way? In personal development, that can feel fantastic and it can feel overwhelming. We'll talk about this and more in the Tend the Flame podcast today. I'm Kate Breton, your podcast host, and I've also been a lot of different things. I'm a trained teacher from public to private sector. I've been studying and teaching holistic healing for 20 years and share my passion speaking about it around the world. My most acclaimed work at becoming a better human in this is been in the school of motherhood, which really illuminated for me that everything is connected, and that ends up being a really good thing, especially when we're feeling aligned with life's rhythm. This podcast, the one you found, it's a space to share how I've learned to slow down sometimes and enjoy life more as a mother, teacher, and speaker. My intention is to save you time by giving it back to you, learning from my mistakes as well as my ahas by employing ease to enjoy our days. Sometimes all we need is permission. I believe we create a more beautiful world when we work together. And that's what I do when I work in mentorship classes, keynotes, and that's what I'm doing here with you today. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Tend the Flame podcast. So, if you've been listening to all of the episodes, we were not here. This episode is coming out on, I had to think for a second, on June 4th. There was no podcast on May 28th. There was an unplanned skip. So you are not a podcast off. There was just 1 week without because there was parenting to happen and we wanted to be our best in the task at hand. When we are talking about where there is a will, there is a way, we are entering our conversation about one of the most powerful energy centers in our body. And that's my personal opinion. That's my personal opinion. Our belly, our manipura chakra, our gut, our knowing, our lower dantian has a lot of names. It is the seat of Agni, which is the Vedic term for fire, right? This is the Tend the Flame podcast. I'll give you a hint. If you follow my work, I teach a class called Sit in Your Center, and this podcast is called Tend the Flame, and they're both attending the same invitation to come into the seat of your knowing and help make that flame burn brighter. Because when we have a nice clear flame, we can make better decisions. So let's talk a little bit about that idea of flame, I'm realizing. And for those of you who already know what Agni is, thank you. May something in the iteration of a small definition serve you today. I know sometimes I can hear things 1,000 times over and it hit lands on the day that I need to be reminded. So, as I was instructed, and I mean that very literally, the first time I had heard this concept, I was in yoga teacher training in, I think that's like 2004-ish, 2003, 2002, something like that. And 2002. And it was at Yoga on Main, and they were talking about Agni and this idea that, and this is not, if you, this is not the only place this is true or that this is taught. I like to talk in a conversational style to you, so you know where my ideas are coming from. Oftentimes, when I'm working with a client, they'll say, "Oh, I've heard that," and then they'll give me the source of where they've heard it. And it's like, yes, of course. Of course, it doesn't just come from one place because the truth presents herself specifically as needed to the person that needs to hear it, right? So this is not a singular place that this occurs from, obviously, but maybe it would serve us to remember that it comes in the form that is most digestible to us. So, in health, one of the major things that we need to be doing, our system needs to be able to complete to maintain our health is our digestion. And when something is impeding our digestion, or there are things the body can't rid itself of quick enough, there is disruption. And you may have noticed that my voice, I seem to this spring be enjoying more of a reaction to the cold or the wet or the pollen and have like a nasally experience. This is actually a great example that it is not just the fire in my belly. It is not just my digestive fire, meaning that I ate my breakfast and it was able to be disintegrated and integrated and resourced and then released. Disintegrated, integrated, resourced, and released, such that my body needs. But it would also be the air that I breathe. What is the quality of the air that I'm breathing? Can my body integrate that, resource from that, release? And when I'm inhaling, are there things that are not easily releasing? Right? That's constipation, right? When it's your stomach and you're like, oh, I ate too much. And oof, that dinner last night, it's like your colon is saying, I'm not able to release this. Now, as always, life is to be enjoyed. I would argue even more and more these days that having a healthy lifestyle gives you more enjoyment because there is a lot of expectation on the body to discern a lot of information. And if you're like, wait a minute, I thought we were talking about digestion. Agni is the internal fire seated at your center, your belly. Put your hands over your belly. So let's bring you into this moment, right? So you can put your hands, I'm doing it myself, over your belly button, over your abdomen. This is your third, right? So we did first, second, we're on third chakra. Chakra just is an invitation of a word through Vedic concepts that would be a seat of energy. It is not the only word. The sound, if you've been tracking all the classes, is rum. The color is yellow. And I will be sourcing from both a Vedic philosophy and a Hawaiian perspective because those were the schools that have informed the perspective shift in my own muscle of a brain to view my body and its well-being differently. When you so when I said about the information, that seat of Agni from a Vedic perspective, that seat of waves of knowing, the Na'au from a Hawaiian perspective, which I may be more, I now I realize it might be more confusing that I'm giving you this, but we'll in two different philosophies, but staying the course that you digest your food, okay? You digest your air. You digest your emotions, don't you? Oh, I don't feel I'm just so nervous. I just have butterflies in my belly. Oh, I don't know. My gut is just telling me. Yeah. So there is the food at the most tactile level, supportive food that can be integrated, resourced, and released, allows the other operating systems of your body to also perform well. Let me keep it about myself. I have mentioned before, I'm a coffee drinker. I love coffee. I could drink it all day long. I don't. I give myself 1 cup of coffee because for my being, my temperament, and my season of life, if I drink more than 1 cup, I get frazzled. And if I'm frenetic and frazzled, I can't be at peace. And if I overstimulate my system, then my body's like, what am I supposed to do with this? And then you want me to be sitting still and reading and finding solutions and cooking and being patient with other people. It's not fair. I've given you feedback that I will indulge your attachment to your morning cup of coffee, but please do not overwhelm me. I would say that is an example of a healthy-ish relationship with the my Agni, my fire, my ability to digest, right? That make a little bit of sense? The emotional piece, if I don't listen to it, we're going to pause there. We're going to go down that road today. Where there's a will, there's a way. The emotional piece is asking me either to react or not react, but my ability to hear my stomach give me a clue. It's easier to hear when we have a established and trusted relationship with our energy center of our will, which is the manipura chakra, the belly. That makes sense. Think about this idea of fire, of will, of action. You don't want your fire burning so bright all the time, right? Preferable once you get the fire going, that you let it like ebb and flow, right? Like you give it time to rest. You're not asking it to fire all the time. And this idea, I have to tell you, so here we go on our journey, was very fascinating to me when I was reading the one thing, one or I don't remember if it's one thing or the one thing by co-written by Keller Williams. And it was one of my friends who recommended the book to me, and it was fantastic because he was talking about this idea of where there's a will, there's a way. And just pull yourself up by your bootstraps. And he was saying that like it's not an infinite source. Your will is not an infinite source, and it actually wanes through the day. I know. Is that just not a fabulous reminder? It's not an infinite source, but it can grow stronger. I believe he said, or this might be part of my integrated interpretation with like practice choices, so that we stack the deck in our favor so that it's easier to listen to the will and intent that we are choosing to focus in our life. So him, Williams and others have told us like how you start your morning is how you run your day. So if you feed your system something that is not nutritive but slows you down or frazzles you out, then all of a sudden your day is not starting from a place of center. Makes sense, right? He was saying that if you over I'm gonna leave. It's this next piece is what I would like to cite my sources. This next piece is like Williams inspired, but I cannot say that all of it. Like I would like to credit him, and then we're gonna like deviate. So I can't tell you what page number, but it is around the place with Will. Which anyway, I'm giving you the book. Um, but this concept has come up for me in parenting, in use of social media, and then Williams said it again, and I was like, oh, and it's in business too. Okay, this is great. This is just the truth. And it's like that's how my brain works. Like I know everything is connected, like I say in the beginning of every podcast, and that is an intention. And I know that it's, what's it within is without, but I'm also human, so I have my own blind spots. And so that when I hear information applied to another category, it sort of helps with my, this is still true, or it's even more true, or I'm not wrong for slowing down, or okay. So he was saying, if you're constantly sourcing your will for several things, then you're not going to have enough of it for the one thing. So for over stimulating ourselves with information, over sourcing ourselves with always multitasking, then we're tapping that will all of the time. We're asking it to make thousands of decisions a day when really we can like only handle so many. Now, if you're saying, Kate, I have so much to do during the day, I know. But when we doubt our one thing, when we doubt the clarity of our worth, of our voice, and then that sensation in the gut that tells you to do something, this is what I mean. When your gut says, mm-mm, and you're like, oh yeah. But everybody else does it, and so and so told me it would be a good idea. And so the voice in the gut says, mm-mm, low tone, rooted, quiet, supportive, not overwhelming. The voice up here, the one of the others, The squeak of who am I? That feels scary, can override the will. The voice up here has 101 reasons why you should fail. And its chatter breeds doubt. I would say doubt can come through indecision with too much wind, tiring the brain, dispersing the fire. Can also come with this very heavy wetness, doubt that creates sort of like a dampness of unworth that can put the fire out. Where there's a will, where there's a spark, there's a way. Where there is doubt and confusion, which we all go through, where there is doubt and confusion, there's an override of our personal resources. And if will is a limited resource, I think this might be why so many people that are successful are trying to tell you to stay off your phone. Our phones, I'll come back to plural, our phones in the morning. Because we start making all these choices that don't have any real significance in our day. And we're already siphoning off the resource of our will. Instead of, as cheesy as it may sound, reading an intentional prayer, which I do every morning. Or if I'm really have enough time, because I'm in the season of parenting a young one. So I do not always have the time. If I can journal and write out, that would be creating from the air into the form of the word, establishing the root of my will for the day. And sometimes it's, I wish you were in front of me, friend, so I could see if I was going too fast. Sometimes, like in credit to Julia Cameron in the Artist's Way of the morning pages where you do the 5-page dump, you are siphoning off the doubt. You are skimming off the sludge. You are getting out the crankiness. So they there. Instead of slinging them at a family member or slinging them at yourself, you have slung them onto the page. They have been given life. You close the book, you make your beverage, you stretch your body, and you go on to the day, free of them. Clearing out the debris that would dampen the light of that will of the center. Does that make sense? So where there's a will, there's a way. Where we can hear what we want and trust it. We might not know the way, but where there's doubt, when you're in a park, where there's doubt, you might just end up going in circles. So I know that metaphor probably doesn't carry all the way through. And I was thinking about how there was a woman on Instagram. I'll have to find her and source her in the show notes. My production team is off today, so I can't just ask them to pull it up. But she was saying if you don't have a connection to yourself, you just pause and choose. Right? So that's reestablishing will. If you've gotten to a place where you haven't made good choices and you aren't living a life that you enjoy, it's okay. Because now you know what not to do. I'll let you in on a little secret. I was preparing for a class I'm teaching on Sunday, and I was thinking about how, oftentimes when I teach the breath, the inhale will go on and on and on and on and on, and the exhale will go, psh, the people are done. You can inhale, 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 and then I say exhale, elongate the exhale, and they're done in like a second or two, whereas they can inhale easily for 10 to 12 seconds. And I was thinking of a phrase to help the brain release. And the exhale phrase is I'm not wrong. You inhale, and you exhale, tell yourself, I'm not wrong. And watch the exhale extend. Think about your diaphragm. Do you know where it is? So right underneath your rib cage is this diaphragm. And when you inhale, it pushes down, right? And it massages the organs. Mhm. Go presses down onto the will, the inhale. And then on the exhale, it flutters up and lets go of the past, of the residual breath that might be stuck, of some of the anxious emotions or the doubtful emotions that have happened when there wasn't a full release of the breath in a different way. Yeah. Such a perspective shift on the will of when you say I'm not wrong, because sometimes indecision comes because we care so much that we don't want to be wrong, and that is a good thing. But if it keeps us on the sidelines of our life, it's not the best. It's not the best. What's the what's the baseball song? Put me in, coach. I'm ready to play. Look at me. I could be center field. You're ready for center field, kid. It doesn't matter how you felt before this podcast started. Doesn't matter what happened yesterday, because we are in an ever expanding and contracting universe. So we can exhale. We can put our hands on our belly, and we can connect with the will that presents the way. I mean, why not? So if you've been in indecision, we need to reestablish the muscle to trust our decisions. So you pause and you choose. The will is not an infinite source. When we give constant answers and questions to our brain, the brain will tire. And guess what she's going to do? She's going to pull the energy from everybody else. She's going to exhaust them. But when we feel empowered and we feel strong in our center, we feed, right? We feed. We feed the rest of our body. We're like, that was so great. I'm so proud of myself, right? That emotion feeds, it expands. Think about that color yellow, the sun. Think if you were moving from the sun from your belly, that you had and allowed the possibility that you were connected to an infinite source, and that source is making itself available for you to find a way. When I was working on this center, I think it was 2 years ago. I'm always working on it, but I had a particular intention to reestablish my own will and my own reliance on choices. Um, I worked with the Gayatri mantra. I worked with Lilavati of Aroma Bliss and her oils and the Gayatri mantra, with the idea that I would infuse myself through mantra, through speaking, through anointing the body, which is what I really mean, like oiling the body or using essential oil on the body to help inspire this forward movement, this sun. So the essential oil that I would recommend, because this is, again, if you're new to this type of podcast class that we're doing here, is to give you tactile experience, even though you're listening on your headphones. So I would recommend to you like a blood orange essential oil or a lemon. Bring in the citrus. Bring in the idea of Sita and Ram, this balance of masculine and feminine, Ku and Hina, and balancing this will, that it doesn't have to be a will that negates the totality of your being. I don't know why that voice came in, but the idea of, like, you don't have to push for it to be the will. You can move, you can dance with it. that it can be sometimes a choice that is an exertion of willpower, and sometimes it can be a choice that is a recalibration of essence, such that you shine. There's a lot of different ways to look at it. And for the flower essence, I'm gonna recommend the 5 element essence. It's great for parents. I use the one that's in a glycerite for kiddos. It is I'll link it, but the thing is that if you're ever upset or there's been like a big boo-boo or like an anxiousness that rises up, it's these 5 flowers. So it's like kind of like a catch-all, to bring you back into center without exerting someone else's will over you, but think about a flower that sprouts up, the roots up, break through the soil, turn towards the sun, and emanates a support system. What if we start looking at the power to choose as moving in congruency with our support system, as in moving with a unified being, mind, body, and spirit, that your will can sometimes be a demonstration that others can see, and sometimes it's an emanation that allows you magnetism that permeates you and not what you think you are to be, not what you people please. That would be something I do. I didn't know it was that. I just thought I could make everybody happy. So that's what you're supposed to do. Hashtag no. Take it from me. That was not the right choice. Um, I saw something, I think this is particular to women, but I could be wrong. I am a woman. And I'm raising a son, so I just know that there's differences in our brains. I can just see that from my daily life in ways I didn't expect. But they said something about like when women choose a partner based on potential, they it was something like they see how they would handle the situation and assume that the other person would do the same thing. I'm like, oh my gosh, that is a really accurate assessment. And guess what? That's not fair or true or kind or valiant. It's actually not correct. Much better to take all of that figuring that your brain would do about another and turn it in to figure out who you are and be clear of your worth and your shine and activate your own magnetism. So your decisions are being made based through your filter, not you guessing somebody else's need and filtering through there all the way outside of yourself, reaching so far, making it much more difficult. Instead, you come back to center, put your hand on your belly, start to practice pausing and choosing. Begin to remember every morning that will is a finite resource. And you'll just take the first 5 to 10 minutes of your day, if possible, and align yourself and set an intention, will and intent, dictate your day, and make ever subtle choices to move closer so that intent is becoming manifest. Contemplate at the end of the day one thing that you're proud of. Go to sleep with that on your brain, something that you did that was close, something that was unexpected, something that you are grateful for. It is an incredibly powerful practice. How you tune your brain is where you set your sleep journey. If you also can set your sleep journey on restitution of your spirit and form, that would be an allotment of your will. That would be a checking in of your choice, harnessing that power and that center to choose. So where there's a will, there's a way. Where there is clarity, there's clear choice. Where there is confusion and doubt, which is inevitable, but when it gets given a damp environment to proliferate, We need to reestablish an environment warm and clear for you to inhabit your life. And the way that we begin to reestablish that will and to see that we do always have a power to choose is through a careful calibration of small choices. So we went from the root to relational to choice to will. And then where are we going next? To heart, as you feel. And so that relational and that feeling tone meet in between, right? Where we are right now in your center. Feeling and relating, enabling and informing our choices. So take this class and just see what you choose. Start to tune into the voice. Listen to the impulses of the body. If the body isn't sending a message, that's fine. Start to harness the 5 minutes that you wake up and the 5 minutes before you go to sleep to start creating a pathway of possibility to hear that communication that is actually always waiting for you. If you are needing help with that, you want to learn more about center, you are incarnate in the female form, and you feel like, I'm really beginning to understand what she's talking about. I wonder why this is coming into my life right now. Send me a message, kate@katebretton.com. And there are availabilities to have personal spiritual development. It is a skill set. It's so crazy to me that it took me so long to see that it's just a skill set. You know, I'm going to strike that word just. It is a skill set. And in a world that has so much information, discernment is going to be a skill set that will set you apart because you'll be able to choose when to shut off. Like, I want to scroll for 15, 20 minutes. I actually want to do this, as opposed to I do this because I have so much confusion. I'm just going to overlay confusion with additional voices because I'm actually so lost inside of myself that it's too hard to get back. It's not true. It could be hard. And for lots of reasons and many different ways, it can be exceptionally difficult. But I've known a lot of people that have come from places that were exceptionally difficult to reignite their life. And they do it by tending their flame in 1,000 different ways. By reading a poem, by drinking warm lemon water, by hugging their child, by reconnecting with a friend, by walking their dog, by getting a cat, by not eating dairy, by eating dairy. It's a polarity universe. What one person is not best for one person is the right answer for another. You know, it isn't my, it isn't my right, and it isn't my best use of this place to tell you what is best for you. I can just remind you of some ideas of things that I have found fascinating, I have understood, and yet in the same lifetime have forgotten and had to return to. So my guess is now that if I've done it, there's probably somebody else that's doing it. And the best thing that I can do with this microphone is call you back home to yourself too. So if you found something supportive in this podcast, you know how we roll here. We want to support that which we want to see more of. So forward it to a friend, put it on social media. If you do, tag me, Kate M. Brinton. I'll share it. If you're thinking that, I do want to get a relationship again with my will, with my voice, with this massive change that's coming. So many people are in the midst of change, and I am I like astrology as a tool. It's not one of the tools I teach. I'm not a student of it. I'm curious with it, and I source friends of mine that are masterful with it. There's just copious amounts of change afoot in the next 18 months to 2 years. It just is. I like to call astrology my weather report. Maybe you can feel the change coming too. And I feel sometimes right now when people say change ominous ways, it has to be a negative. I don't think it has to be a negative. In fact, I think it's going to be quite positive. I just, I gotta get rid of that word just. I also know that there are sometimes great sacrifices for wonderful things. And so making space and letting go of things that we don't need, like doubt and confusion and minimalization of our brilliant light, it's a great day to let that go. If you want help, hop on over to katebrenton.com and we can schedule a call to see if we're the right fit. It's not even who knows? What are you looking for? But I do have a couple people right now utilizing the Sit in Your Center class because in my life it's helpful to have, I could binge on something that is not gonna be nutritive, or I can watch some videos on things to help my day, expand my awareness, and then dialogue it, right? Because where two or more are gathered, there's amazing change. And I know that for me, that it's really important to be able to have conversations that are illuminating and challenging to help foster my growth. I mean, I do it and I can offer it. So I do. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Tend the Flame podcast. And remember, where there's a will, there's a way. And where there's a way, there is unseen support waiting for you. Thanks for tuning in.